Except for a few blue speckles on the surface, the Hero12 looks identical to the Hero11, but there are a few improvements. How well it compares to the Hero11 and whether it's really better than the Action 4, we'll find out in this video. There are 15 categories, 2 points for the winner of a category, 1 for the second place. And let's start right away with the most important part of this comparison, the image quality. But before we look at the image quality categories in detail, it makes sense if you take a look at these comparison shots with a completely open mind and form your own initial opinion. In fact, the Hero12 shots look identical to those of the Hero11, and that's true for every type of shot. The Hero12 produces exactly the same images as the Hero11. There's no difference in image quality. The Action 4's recording, on the other hand, looks quite different. What looks better here is also very subjective, but let's take a look at each aspect of image quality in a little more detail. And let's start with a very important topic that is often somewhat overlooked, the field of view. An action camera should offer a very wide field of view. Only the extremely wide field of view enables that special immersive look. And the Action 4 and the GoPro have different strengths when it comes to the field of view. The Action 4 has a wider field of view than the two GoPros in almost all settings. This applies to the field of view wide, ultra wide or super view, and especially to linear or D-warp, the field of view in which the distortions of the fisheye lens are removed. The Action 4's field of view is significantly wider here. In return, both GoPros have a sensor with a special, almost square 8:7 format. When you shoot in this format, you can then crop your shot vertically or horizontally very flexibly. You can turn your shot into a traditional 16:9 shot or into a vertical shot for social media. However, the 8:7 format also has limitations. Not all frame rates and settings are available in this mode. Plus, you have to crop most shots. There is also now the ability on the Hero12 to freely select the format when you hold the camera horizontally. So you can hold the Hero12 horizontally and choose a vertical format of 9:16. However, since the sensor is not completely square, this of course results in a smaller field of view than if you were to simply hold the camera vertically. Of course, vertical shots are also possible with the Action 4. And then there is the new Max Lens mod for the Hero12, which leads to an even wider field of view. But this has to be bought separately and is relatively expensive. I therefore find it difficult to include it in the rating. Overall, I prefer the Action 4's wider field of view, perhaps because I don't take as many vertical shots with an action camera. 2 points for the Action 4, 1 for the two GoPros. Color and contrast, certainly one of the most important categories in this test. After all, color and contrast make the look of the shot. Depending on the shot, the colors of the Action 4 and the two GoPros differ greatly. The Action 4 shot usually looks a bit cooler. The blues are highlighted more, while on GoPro the yellows and greens have a bit more saturation. Purely from the colors, I would perhaps prefer the GoPro. Compared to the Action 4, the images from the two GoPros are usually a bit brighter. The shadows in particular are brighter on the GoPro. Interestingly, this is not always the case, but perhaps the biggest difference is that GoPro adds a lot of clarity to the shot. The contrast at the edges is raised a lot, giving the shots more punch and making them look a bit more aggressive. You can see this most clearly in the clouds or even in the skin tones. The Action 4 shot looks much softer, but that doesn't mean it necessarily has less detail. I have to say that I prefer the softer look of the Action 4. GoPro also has a color profile with a bit more saturation. Vibrant, for those who don't like this more natural look. And for those who still want to edit the colors of the shot, all three cameras have a flat color profile. The Hero12 still got a proper log profile compared to the Hero11. It protects the highlights a bit better. Personally though, I still like the Action 4's log profile the best. But overall, I don't see a clear winner in this category. Partly because it's much a matter of taste. I give all three cameras 1 point. A very important point when it comes to image quality is the dynamic range. That is how well details are represented in the very bright and very dark areas of the image. The Action 4 benefits in this area from the fact that it has a larger sensor. Especially in the very bright areas of the image, the highlights are somewhat better protected on the Action 4 compared to the two GoPros. In the dark areas, I can hardly notice a difference. The Hero12 now has a dedicated HDR mode. Blown out highlights no longer occur with it. For example, when you ride your bike through the forest. However, it is a separate recording mode that has a few restrictions when it comes to frame rates and settings. HDR shots also sometimes look a bit unnatural. Even though I won't use this mode often myself, it's certainly a useful feature for many. Therefore, 2 points for the Hero12, 1 for the Action 4. The highest resolution on the Action 4 is 4K. The two GoPros can shoot at 5.3K, and 5.3K also looks significantly better on the GoPro than 4K. While you can barely notice the difference in resolution in normal use, when you zoom in, You can very much tell that the footage from the two GoPros has more detail, even if the difference isn't huge. By the way, I couldn't see any particular compression issues with any of the three cameras. That's 2 points for the Hero12 and the Hero11, 1 for the Action 4. Slow motion is one of the most important features of an action camera. Probably the best results are achieved by all three cameras in 4K and 120 frames per second. The image quality is good with all three cameras and hardly differs from recordings in 4K with lower frame rates. However, it has to be said that the Hero12 and Hero11 take visibly better shots in 5K. On the other hand, the two GoPros can shoot in 2.7K at 240 frames per second. On the Action 4, you have to reduce the resolution to 1080 for 240 frames per second. No recording really looks good at 240 frames per second, but the GoPro's recording looks slightly better. Overall, I think it's a tie. 1 point for all three cameras. The Action 4 clearly has the largest sensor of all three cameras in the comparison, with 1/1.3 inches. The Hero12's sensor, on the other hand, is the same size as the Hero11's. And while sensor size isn't everything when it comes to image quality, it does have big advantages in low light. With low light image enhancement and EIS priority in low light, the Action 4 also has two features to further improve performance in low light. Comparing the three cameras isn't easy though, because GoPro brightens the shots a lot, so even manual exposure settings don't produce comparably bright results. The Hero12's shots look identical to those of the Hero11, even in low light. GoPro's automatic exposure also seems to use a lower shutter speed than DJI's, as the electronic stabilization suffers much more in low-light conditions. Even though the comparison is not easy, I clearly see the Action 4 ahead in the low-light comparison. Especially when it gets very dark, it achieves much better results. It has to be said that the Action 4 is not a low-light specialist, and you shouldn't expect too much. But especially the enhancement feature can lead to a visible improvement in image quality. That's 2 points for the Action 4, 1 for the two GoPros. Before we take a look at the seemingly improved stabilization of the GoPro, let's listen to how the audio of the three cameras sounds in comparison. And I'd like to take this opportunity to show you something. You can imagine that many people use the same password for multiple websites or online platforms. And you've probably also heard that quite a few websites have suffered a loss of user data. Imagine that your account was also the subject of such an attack. The bad actor could now take your stolen account data and try to log into other platforms with it. And our today's sponsor, NordVPN, offers several tools to fix such a problem. Not only does it offer a strong password manager, but it will also warn you via Dark Web Monitor if one of your passwords has been stolen. But for me personally, the most important feature of NordVPN is that I am secure online and my activities remain private and cannot be tracked. And since I also travel a lot, I often take advantage of the benefits when shopping online. Especially with holiday deals, the prices vary greatly depending on the country from which the site is accessed. Using NordVPN, you can select a suitable country and access the online platform from the country of your choice and get the best deal possible. And I have a good deal for my viewers too. Using the link in the description, you get 4 bonus months on top of a 2-year plan. It's completely risk-free. You can try it for 30 days and get your money back if you don't like it. So via the link nordvpn.com MountMedia, you get 4 extra months when you sign up for a 2-year plan. The recordings of the Hero12 not only look like those of the Hero11, they also sound the same. However, all 3 cameras sound similarly good. The GoPros sound a bit fuller, but perhaps not as clear. The Hero12 allows you to connect an external microphone via Bluetooth. Headphones like my AirPods Pro 2 also work, for example. However, the audio quality is rather poor in this case. The performance of the 3 cameras in windy conditions is similarly good. 1 point for all 3 cameras. With Hypersmooth 6, GoPro seems to have improved the stabilization on the Hero12 once again. I think that predominantly the auto boost feature has been revised. The boost setting is no longer available on the Hero12. In this comparison with the Hero11, however, I can't see any visible improvement. This is true even when I enable auto boost on both cameras. And the Action 4 offers at least equally good stabilization. I think it's just the wider field of view that helps here. As you can see here, the Action 4's shot actually looks a bit more stable than that of the Hero12 at the default setting. With auto boost versus Rocksteady Plus, however, I see the GoPro as having a slight advantage. The Action 4 was criticized for producing a slight jerkiness when shooting in the shade or in the forest, for example. So not yet in low light, but whenever the lighting conditions are rather poor. And you can also see it here in comparison to the GoPro, even if it is not so clear. But I would not say that it is dramatic. because the cameras shake here already quite strong. I think the shutter speed of the Action 4 is just a bit too low here. Overall, that's 2 points for the Hero12 and the Hero11, 1 for the Action 4. As you could see, the shooting quality of all three cameras is similarly good. Therefore, it seems even more important to take a close look at what other advantages and disadvantages these three cameras bring to the table. Let's take a look at the body of the three cameras first. The body of the Hero12 is identical to that of the Hero11. It's also the same weight. The Action 4 is smaller and lighter. Even though the difference isn't huge, it's an advantage. The Action 4's body also allows you to dive up to 18 meters deep, and that's without an additional case. With the GoPros, you can only dive down to 10 meters. In addition, the Action 4 comes with a frame that not only protects the camera and displays a bit better from impact, but also allows you to mount the Action 4 vertically. All in all, that's 2 points for the Action 4 and 1 for the two GoPros. And since we were already on the subject of the mount, the Action 4 has a better mounting system with the magnetic mount. The camera can be removed and remounted easily and quickly. No screwing is necessary. When the Action 4 is mounted properly, the mount is absolutely secure because it also has a locking mechanism. The Action 4 will not fall off. Also, I wouldn't say that the magnetic mount would cause more vibration in the shots. Here I mounted the Action 4 to the handlebars of my bike and did a comparison test with the Hero12. By the way, there is also a magnetic mount as an accessory for the GoPro. The Hero12 has received a new feature in this context. It now has a tripod mount on the bottom by the mounting fingers. This is very useful if you want to attach the GoPro to a tripod for time lapses, for example. Overall, that's 2 points for me for the Action 4, 1 for the Hero12. And the Action 4 has another important advantage. Both displays are touch displays. That means the front display is also a touch display, and you can change all settings via the front display. That can be a huge advantage depending on where you mount the camera. The GoPro, on the other hand, cannot be operated via the front display. I also have the impression that the Action 4's back display is a bit more responsive than that of the two GoPros. That's 2 points for the Action 4 and 1 for the two GoPros. What about battery life? GoPro advertises the Hero12 as having a much longer battery life. That's interesting. After all, it apparently uses the same battery as the Hero11. In 4K 30, the Hero12 shoots for 1 hour and 42 minutes, the Hero11 shoots for 1 hour and 22 minutes, and the Action 4 for 1 hour and 52 minutes. For me, that's 2 points for the Action 4 and 1 for the Hero12. And the much discussed topic of overheating. Yes, I know, an overheating test can never be completely according to reality. And if you're primarily shooting when biking or motorcycling, for the most part, you won't have any issues. The airstream will provide sufficient cooling. But if you're taking long shots during other activities, such as hiking or kayaking, or maybe if you're filming a basketball game, the situation is different. And the results of this test are somewhat surprising. I did a comparison shot in 4K 60 here in the office at 24 degrees Celsius. The Hero12 lasted 42 minutes, the Hero11 only 25 minutes, and the Action 4 even only 18 minutes. The Action 4 clearly performs the worst. That's true at other settings as well. I know that other reviews on YouTube come to different conclusions. One guess is that the cameras here in the EU are subject to stricter heat restrictions. But then that would have to apply to all three cameras, not just the Action 4. According to my test, that's 2 points for the Hero12, 1 for the Hero11. What experiences did I make and what special features do the three cameras have in addition? I did not experience any crashes with any of the three cameras during my tests. All cameras worked reliably. By the way, the menu of the Hero12 has been revised. Although I would not say that the innovation is a big advantage. I've never changed settings so often unintentionally. Nevertheless, I would say that all three cameras are comparably easy to operate. On the Action 4, when shooting with a selfie stick or a pole, you can remove it from the shot, similar to a 360 camera. However, this is only possible via the app and in low quality. Only one of the three cameras has GPS, which is interestingly the Hero11. GPS has been removed from the Hero12. The Action 4 requires a remote control in the form of a wristband to get the GPS data. The Max Lens Mount 2 is only available for the Hero12. It does not work in combination with the Hero11. For GoPro, this is one of the most important selling points for the Hero12. And the Hero12 has, as already tested, another interesting feature. You can use Bluetooth to connect wireless headphones like AirPods and use them to record sound or give voice commands. The Hero12 and Hero11 can take 27 megapixel high-resolution photos or extract a high-resolution photo from a video file. In addition, both GoPros allow you to schedule shots, which is not possible with the Action 4, and there are creative shooting modes like star trails, light painting or vehicle lights. Overall, I see the two GoPros as having a slight advantage when it comes to the sum of features, but it really depends on which one you really need. 2 points for the two GoPros, 1 for the Action 4. The price doesn't make a camera better or worse, but it can be important in deciding which one to buy. The cheapest camera is the Hero11. It currently costs $349. The Hero12 costs $399, and the Hero12 with a subscription at GoPro costs only $299. Since the subscription currently costs only $25, there is really no reason to buy the Hero11. However, there will certainly be interesting offers for the Hero11 at other retailers. Links to current offers can be found in the video description. The Action 4 currently costs $399. A bit difficult to clearly assign points here, also because the prices vary greatly. For me, that's currently 2 points for the two GoPros and 1 for the Action 4. And with that, the Hero12 can narrowly take the top spot of the action cameras again. Whereby I have to admit that it's more of a draw. The price in particular is a very relative criterion. Especially if you often shoot in low light or prefer a softer look, you should rather go for the Action 4. Compared to the Hero11, the Hero12 has only been slightly improved. However, some improvements are important, especially when it comes to battery life or overheating performance. There will be more videos about the Hero12. Give me a like as feedback if the video was interesting for you. Also take a look at the interesting offer from our sponsor NordVPN. Stay tuned and see you next time.